goodbye to what we had. The good times that made us laugh, always and bad. I thought we get to see tomorrow, but forever's gone away. It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome to a very special edition of the Philly Podcast, brought to you by SixPackCoverage.com, La Terrain Watches, and The Monkey's Uncle. I am Eric Perugini. I'm here with my co-host Christopher Lahiff, and tonight we are with author Mike Sielski, of also writer for Philadelphia Inquirer, and we are talking about his new book, Kobe Bryant and the Pursuit of Immortality, The Rise. And Mike, nice to have you on.
Guys, thank you so much for having me. This is cool. This is great. I appreciate it very much.
So, Chris, you got something?
No, just thanks for joining us and joining Monkey's Uncle in Doylestown where we're live. And we're here to talk about your book, The Rise, for Kobe Bryant. You can get it at monkeysuncle.net. If you want to purchase it, $29.99.
Yeah, unless you get it at Costco.
You get 8 pounds of bacon.
8 pounds of bacon and a home appliance right with it.
So I have a couple questions that I wanted to ask and then decide on it.
Okay.
What made you want to write a book about Kobe Bryant? I mean, obviously, we all have love for Kobe Bryant. But some of us, the love for me, I've always liked him. Obviously, the city of Philadelphia took a while because he was a late. He beat us in finals, and I was at the All-Star game. He booed him.
Yes, they did.
I was there too. I was just sitting there on my seat like, wow, this is ridiculous. Like, it's Kobe Bryant. Like, and I think the Eagles Super Bowl win and how he reacted to it is like when the city of Philadelphia got back, like fell back in love with him.
Yeah.
And then obviously we all know the terrible tragedy. But what made you want to write a book about Kobe Bryant?
Well, I mean, I always thought of him as a really complex figure, right? Like, great in so many ways, flawed in so many ways. I got the chance to cover him a little bit throughout his career with the Lakers. And so after he died in January of 2020, I wrote several columns about him for the Inquirer because of the connection to the area, his ties to Philly, his father having gone to high school and college and grown up in Philadelphia, and the connection to Lower Merion and all of that. So about 2 months after he died, I ended up kind of collaborating on a piece for the Inquirer with his coach at Lower Merion, Greg Downer, who knew him as well as anybody. And Greg had flown out to Los Angeles for Kobe's memorial service at Staples Center, and on the flight back had kind of written a loose essay, kind of compiling his thoughts about Kobe and what he felt about it and what Kobe meant to him. And Greg sent it to me and said, "Hey, do you think we could turn this into something?" And it ran in the Inquirer, and that gave me the idea that in the aftermath of Kobe's death, most people, I think, looked at him as a Laker and a person of the West Coast first and foremost, primarily because when he joined the Lakers, he was 17 years old. So he kind of grew up before America's eyes, right? He went from 17 to 41, and he was in the public eye the entire time. But having grown up in the area and worked in the area for a long time, I knew that there was this, no other phrase for it, origin story where he had lived in Italy and he had come back to Lower Merion, and Lower Merion had won a state championship while he was there. And there was this big decision he had to make about, am I going to college or am I going to the NBA? And oh my gosh, he took Brandy to the senior prom. And there was all this stuff around him that had happened before he ever got to Los Angeles and Shaquille O'Neal and 5 championships and some of the darker stuff, which we can talk about if you want to. But I just thought that's a story that's worth telling, that I think a lot of people in our area probably know, but that around the country and around the world they may not know as well.
Okay. Um, so it's funny. You bring up Brandy. I got a funny story. So 1996, everyone knew who Kobe Bryant was. I didn't. I played basketball, like street basketball, and I was down in Cheltenham and Lower Merion, like me and my friends. We went around just playing basketball. And I show up. It's like April. Sun's nice, so we go out. We play a pickup basketball game. Well, there's this kid dunking, like dunking, and I'm like, I'm not. He's not dunking on me. Like, so we're leaving. So we left, and I got a clear view of his face. Like you said, next month. I'm like, that guy was dunking down in of course. I'm like, why'd you take him Brandy to prom? Like, what is going on? And then obviously he gets drafted by Charlotte. It's traded on draft night, and it's the story, like you said, the origin as
and I get into that in the book. I can answer your question as to why he took Brandy to the prom if you read the rise. But that's kind of the first. Those are the steps he's taking towards celebrity at that time, right? Like, it was a big freaking deal, that prom in the spring of 1996. All the local TV networks covered that night, and I mean, imagine taking Beyonce to your prom. That was the equivalent of what he did with Brandy. And it was an indication of kind of what was to come for him, that he was going to head to the West Coast and become this very famous kind of celebrity / lightning rod.
No, you're absolutely right. Like, Brandy was huge in the 90s. Like you said, it's like taking Beyonce.
Or Rihanna or whatever.
Yeah.
I would take Beyonce, but we all have our preferences.
I wasn't a Leia girl. I was a fan of Leia. So, you have anything, Eric, you want to bring up?
No, actually, I don't really. To be honest with you,
All
I
right.
was letting you take the lead on this one.
So like, obviously, Kobe's death, like, for me and my friends, it hit us hard because we watched him, like, we growing up with him.
Yes.
So it was like, it was a gut punch, and it was just like, this isn't real. Like, no, this did not happen.
Yeah, and I think there's another layer to that too, which is that, and I actually draw this comparison in the book, which is that Kobe had traveled this kind of redemptive, he had redeemed himself, quote unquote. Okay, he had been at the highest heights, winning championships with the Lakers, being a basketball superstar. He had fallen off of that perch from his own doing, whether you're talking about the conflicts with Shaquille O'Neal and Phil Jackson, whether you're talking about the sexual assault charges in Aurora, Colorado. His star had dimmed, significantly. And he came back out of that and won a couple more championships and seemed to soften as he got older. And he became a girl dad, and he won an Oscar, and he was into storytelling, and he became this kind of guy who other NBA players and basketball players, or of any level, looked to as a sage and somebody who would give advice. And I have the Mamba mentality, and you can have it too. And we, as a society, love that kind of story. We love a redemption story like that. And I think when he died, a lot of people were saddened by the fact that they looked at Kobe as ascending again in his life. And the helicopter crash cut that short. And so we're not going to find out what else is he going to do with the rest of his life. What is Gianna, his daughter, going to do with her life? Because, here is this smiling, glowing, beautiful girl who loved basketball like her dad. And she is gone too. And so, I think it's not just that a famous person died. There was something else going on there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he was a girl dad, and I'm a girl dad, and so you just sit there and you look at, and you saw how he was. Like, one of the famous last pictures is him in the Eagles hat and the orange hoodie with his daughter on the Lakers sideline. Like, and it just gets you every time because in that, like, again, you know the origins, but you know how it ends, and it's not a good story.
Yeah.
So, and then Kobe growing up, we saw him. He struggled his first year with the Lakers, but you could see, like, in my eyes, like, watching it from being, a 19-year-old kid and watching this this guy win 3 straight championships, beat my Sixers, and you hated him.
Yeah.
And the only reason you hated him was because he was a Laker. You didn't hate him for any other reason.
I disagree. I think there are two additional reasons why people in Philadelphia hated Kobe. Number one, technically, he wasn't from Philadelphia.
Correct.
And he couldn't wait to get out of here. I think there's a perception that people looked at him and thought, he thinks he's too good for us. He's bigger than Philly. And if you're from Philadelphia, you hate that attitude.
Right.
You absolutely hate it. The second thing is, he would have been a god if he played for the Sixers. He would have been the most popular basketball player in the history of Philadelphia if he had played here. And the very qualities that would have made him that god here, the fact that he was so competitive, the fact that he worked so hard, the fact that he demanded so much of his teammates to the point that he would intimidate them, were the very things that made him hated because he played for the Lakers and played against Philadelphia. It was like your own worst enemy.
Yeah. Now, wasn't there rumors that his agent called the Sixers and said draft him?
That never happened.
Okay, because that was the rumor.
That never happened. What actually happened is his agent, Arn Tellem, and Jerry West, who was the famous player for the Lakers and their general manager, were kind of conspiring behind the scenes to arrange so that Kobe would end up with the Lakers. And there were some major machinations that had to take place. Look, the Sixers thought about taking Kobe. They had the number 1 pick in the '96 draft, but they had their sights set on Allen Iverson. What did happen is one of Kobe's coaches at Lower Merion called the Sixers the day before the draft and said, and got Brad Greenberg, the Sixers general manager, on the phone and said, if you don't take Kobe Bryant, it'll be the biggest mistake you ever made.
That's what it was. It was his coach.
Yeah. But no, they did not. There was no agent lobbying.
Okay.
They wanted him in LA.
Okay. So do you think in your opinion, do you think if you got drafted by the Sixers, you would have got traded like you did with Charlotte?
No, I don't think so. No. If the Sixers had decided at the last minute to take Kobe Bryant with the number 1 overall pick in the draft, Kobe would have been a Sixer because he would have been the number 1 overall pick in the draft. And that would have overcome or overshot any other desires he might have had. He was the first pick. And so I think he would have stayed and played.
And like I said, you could tell he never settled for anything less. He was always, he wanted to be perfect.
Yeah, certainly when it came to basketball, that's 100% true.
And then obviously we know, well, we see it, but the friendship between him and Michael Jordan.
Yes.
Like, is that in the book? Like,
it is.
Okay.
Their first meeting is in the book. One of the cool parts about doing the research for the book was that I got my hands on about 20 microcassette tapes with about 6 hours of interviews with Kobe that nobody had ever heard before. He and a confidant and friend of his, Jeremy Treatman, had tried to collaborate on a book when Kobe was making the transition from high school to the NBA. They were going to call the book My Freshman Year in the NBA. And it was going to be Kobe's memoir at that time. And they couldn't find a publisher. The timing was bad. It just didn't work out. So Jeremy took these tapes and he threw them in a box and threw them in his garage for 25 years and forgot about them. He didn't even know where they were. Fast forward to me getting the idea to do the book. Jeremy and I have known each other for a quarter century. I talked to him for the book. He points me in the right directions, et cetera, et cetera. 3 days before Christmas, December 22nd, 2020, I get a phone call. It's Jeremy. He's cleaning out the garage in his townhouse in Manayunk because he's moving to Boca Raton, Florida. And he says, Mike, I found the tapes. So the next morning, I threw this sucker on, or at least something like it, and drove from Doylestown to Manayunk, and he handed me a giant Ziploc bag full of these microcassette tapes. And I spent the next month and a half listening to them. And on those tapes are Kobe talking about his parents and his close relationship with them. Kobe talking about taking Brandy to the prom, and Kobe talking about meeting Michael Jordan for the first time. Before a Sixers-Bulls game in 1996, Kobe comes in the visiting locker room. Jordan's got the gaggle of media around him, similar to what you see here, probably about 20 people. And he sees Kobe, peeks over the top of the media and sees Kobe. Says, hey, Kobe, how you doing? He recognized him, which gives you an indication of how popular Kobe had become by March of his senior year of high school. And they shake hands and they talk. And Jordan is lobbying him to go to the University of North Carolina, which is, of course, where MJ went. You got to be a Tar Heel, man. You got to go to, if you're going to go to college, go to Carolina, go play for Coach Smith. And Kobe says, yeah, that's great. But then on the tapes, he tells Jeremy, I was never going to go to North Carolina. And the reason is because Michael went there. I wouldn't have had my own identity. I wouldn't have been my own man if I had followed MJ at Carolina. So as much as he admired him and as much as he emulated him as a kid, there were limits even to his admiration.
He wanted his own story.
Yep.
Like as you said, he wanted his own origins. So that's a phenomenal story. Like not wanting to go to North Carolina because of the MJ legacy.
And by then, he had really already made the decision. He was going to go to the NBA. I mean, he knew one of the cool things about Kobe is that he knew his entire senior year, even while all the speculation is running rampant about what's he going to do? Is he going to go to Duke? Is he going to go to LaSalle? And as an undergrad at LaSalle at the time, I was like, oh my God, if we could get Kobe Bryant, that would be the greatest thing ever. Because his dad was an assistant coach there, and there were all of these rumors. And for a time, he actually thought about it. But after the summer of 1995, when he is scrimmaging and playing pickup against NBA players and Division I college players at St. Joe's, and he's holding his own and then some, he knows, I don't have to go to college. It doesn't matter that he scored really high on his SATs and could have gone to Duke even if he wasn't a basketball player and probably would have been a, aeronautical engineer if he had gone there.
Yeah.
Didn't matter. He didn't need college. He was going to get to the NBA in his own terms, and that meant going straight from high school there.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up LaSalle because Donnie Carr went there.
Yes.
And he was supposed to be really good friends with Kobe because
They were. Donnie's in the book, too.
Oh, really? I went to high school with Donnie.
Oh, well, there you go. Roman guy. You didn't tell me that off the top.
Yeah, I'm a Roman Catholic grad. I would say North Catholic, but they're closed.
Yeah.
There he is. So with the way Kobe attacked the game
Mm-hmm.
and how he wanted to be, the greatest, do you think it had anything to do with trying to reinstate the Bryant name, like with Joe and everything?
Totally. I mean, Joe did not have the career in the NBA that he wanted to have. He was an incredible high school player at Bartram High in Southwest Philly, incredible player at LaSalle, left early. He had one more year of eligibility, and he left early. And if he had stayed for that year, he probably would have been the number one overall pick in that following year's draft.
Okay.
But he plays 8 years in the NBA, and he's one of these guys who he's 6'9", and he can dribble, and he can move, and he can shoot, and he can go behind his back and do all this stuff. But he was 6'9" at a time where a basketball coach put a guy who was 6'9" under the basket. And Joe didn't want to be there, didn't like being there. And Joe was kind of a flake. He was kind of a free-spirited guy. He was the kind of guy who'd miss the team bus to practice and things like that. So Kobe saw that, and he heard Joe complain about that and kind of feel regret. Like, I should have been better than I was. I should have gotten a shot. I had to go to Italy to achieve everything I wanted to achieve and to be the player I wanted to be. And that was a big motivating factor for Kobe when he was young, that he was going to restore the Bryant name to royalty in basketball. And so that was part of what motivated him to work so hard. Now, the other part of that was his mother is really where the Mamba mentality comes from. She was the head of the household, very strong woman, Pam Bryant, raised devoutly Catholic, disciplined her kids when it came to academics and their behavior and being polite. And, hey, you got to sit here and you can't play ball until you do your homework and things like that. But what she and Joe had in common when it came to Kobe was they indulged him when it came to basketball. They just said, you do what you're going to do. We will support you. You can tell you can come to practice when Joe's in Italy, the professional team is practicing. And when the Italian head coach says, Kobe, do you mind not dribbling? And you say, pardon my language, F you. I was going to say the word, but I saw we have some young ears in here.
Yes.
Very deep.
Yeah. And you don't discipline him for that at all. You just let him be. And so when it came to basketball, he was spoiled, but he had that within him to push himself anyway.
Yeah, I mean, he was fluent in Italian, correct?
Spoke Italian. I
Yeah.
believe he spoke Spanish too.
Yeah, he was a smart guy. Like he was
really
very intelligent.
Really
He was, not many people talk about how smart he was. They talk about his killer mentality on the court. They don't talk about it off the court, and how great he was. Was there ever a time like that you think Kobe wanted to play for the 76ers? Or
I asked him that. It's at the end of the book. In 2007, the Lakers came to play the Sixers in Philly, and after the game, during the game, I had heard a rumor that Kobe was considering ending his career with the Sixers, that he would, he might think about ending his career in Philly. So after the game, I asked him that. I said, have you ever given any thought to ending your career with the Sixers? And he said, that'd be nice. In high school, it's all I thought about. And he said it in a way that it was obvious that he was kind of weighing what to say. Now, this was 2007. He was still on his image rehabilitation tour after Aurora, Colorado.
Right.
So it was obvious he's kind of sitting back and saying, is this what people in Philadelphia want to hear? Is this what I ought to be saying for my image? It was clearly those gears were turning in his head because what he said was baloney. He didn't dream about playing for the Sixers.
He retired in 2016.
Yeah.
He would have had to sign a 9-year deal.
Yeah. Well, never mind that. The fact that he just never gave it any thought in high school at all. Like the idea of saying in high school, it's all I thought about. No, you didn't. You thought about playing for the Lakers. They were your favorite team. So there's always going to be that mystery at the heart of Kobe, I think, because he, in so many ways, was kind of one step ahead of people. Like I mentioned with respect to his decision to go to the NBA out of high school, he kept that secret for close to a year. And he didn't even tell his high school coach, Greg Downer. Never told him explicitly, hey, coach, by the way, just in case you have to answer a question about it or keep this on the down low, I'm not going to go to Duke. I'm going to go straight to the NBA. Never told him that.
Wow. That's
and he says it on the tapes, and Downer told me that in an interview. So that gives you an idea of how calculating and thoughtful in an interesting way he was.
And he played for 20 seasons.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was ever his mindset that he would play for 20 years.
I think he played until he couldn't play anymore. I think I was there the last game he played in Philly when the Sixers were 0-18 and they beat the Lakers for their first win of the season.
Of course they did.
And he came out absolutely gunning and making everything. He made 3 of his first 4 shots from 3-point range. He had like 16 points, by the midpoint of the second quarter. And then he finished with 20 points because he was just out of gas. He was not the same guy that he had been. And, I think he knew it was time and, he went when it was time.
Yeah, that's good. And then obviously we have the posters up here.
Yeah,
from Jordan,
these are incredible.
From Jordan Spector Art. You got him 24 with his GG on there, his Mamba, his Lower Marion. And I don't know if anyone can see behind Mike is Jordan. It's Kobe and Allen. That these are great. These are great. He just painted these in 2021. Like this is you got the MVP right there. You got the snake. Look, the detail on these it's remarkable. Yeah. Even the sneakers. Yeah. And I remember I used to work at Modell's and I sold them and I sold Kobe Bryant's first sneakers, which looked like moon boots. I don't know if anyone ever remembers. Google Kobe Bryant's first sneakers in 2000. They seriously look like moon boots. Derek can vouch because we used to work together.
I'll tell Sonny Vaccaro that, who signed him to Adidas.
Other than that, I don't have anything else other than buy the book, read it.
I don't care if you read it, just buy it. I got mouths to feed.
Yeah, buy the book, read it. I have my copy. I'm reading on the airplane this week. I'm going away. Cheer competitions. I always need something new to read. There's 8 hours in a gymnasium. But thanks for
thanks for having me on, guys. Oh, great, I appreciate it.
you also have the podcast. The Kobe Bryant podcast.
So these tapes that I uncovered, you can hear them. You can hear Kobe talking on them when he's 17, 18, 19 years old. And we turned them into this 12-part narrative podcast. It's all about the story of his early life. It's kind of a complement or companion piece to the book. And it's called I Am Kobe. And you can get anywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, anywhere. And you get to hear me narrate it. And then you hear, more importantly, you hear Kobe and what he was talking about and what mattered to him at that time.
All right. You got anything, Eric? I know.
Actually, no. I was just going to say this was.
Quiet over there.
Yeah, no. This was your deal tonight. I was just producing. But actually, I just wanted to say, Mike, thank you for coming, and thank you for everybody here. Give yourselves a round of applause for coming out tonight, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously you can buy the book, on the Monkey's Uncle website, monkeysuncle.net, or any local retailer, even Costco. Get yourself 8 pounds of bacon, a home appliance, and the Kobe Bryant book. But other than that, I got nothing else. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
very much, man.
You got it.